It's Miami Dolphins schedule release day, and as we wait for the Dolphins official schedule to come out, I did want to come up and talk about 5 defensive players that could take a massive step forward under new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. I'm excited for Weaver to come over from Baltimore and flash that type of defensive scheme in the 305, and I think 5 guys will benefit from the transition. Before we jump into those 5 players, well, I did just mention it is Dolphins schedule release day, and we will release that full schedule, all 17 games, prime time, away, bye week. We'll have it all later today on the channel. So make sure you are subscribed and make sure you have those notifications turned on and click personalize for all so you get every video and every live stream notified to your phone because you don't want to miss when the Dolphins schedule comes out. All right, before we dive into the 5 players, though, I do want to give a little backstory on Anthony Weaver, the new Dolphins defensive coordinator, because he was the Ravens defensive line coach and assistant head coach over the past 2 NFL seasons. And over those 2 seasons, Baltimore ran a base defense of a 3-4 under Mike Macdonald, who is now the Seahawks head coach, by the way. And I did want to note also that the Ravens lined up in 5 defensive back packages, a.k.a. nickel, at least 79% of the time in 2023. Yes, nickel has been transitioning as to the base of most defenses, and it's the most common defense played, but 79% is still on the higher side, so what should we take away from that? Well, if Anthony Weaver comes from the same background and same mindset as Mike Macdonald did as he was the DC for the Ravens last year, I would expect Miami to line up in a lot of 5 defensive back packages, whether that be 3 corners and 2 safeties, whether it be 3 safeties and 2 corners. Either way, expect a lot of defensive backs on the field for Miami when they're on the defensive side of the ball. And this kind of leads us into our first defensive breakout under Anthony Weaver, and that is safety Jevon Holland, who has just been terrific for Miami after being a second-round pick 3 NFL drafts ago. And I expect Jevon Holland to absolutely flourish. I do. Guy is entering his 4th year in the NFL, not yet extended, which we'll talk about in just a second. But he has been dominant out of Oregon for Miami in every year of his career, and he had a terrific 2023. Did have to battle some injuries and only played in 12 games, but he had 74 tackles. He had an overall PFF grade of 90.4 and a coverage grade of 89.9. He's been absolutely phenomenal for the Miami Dolphins, and you see that 1 interception he had last season? Well, if you remember, that came on Black Friday against the New York Jets when he returned a Hail Mary at the end of the half for a touchdown. Holland has been really, really good for Miami, and I'm excited to see what he can do for the Dolphins in 2024. I'd also give Jevon Holland a lot of freedom on this Miami Dolphins defense because when you saw Anthony Weaver work with Kyle Hamilton on that Baltimore Ravens defense a year ago, Hamilton exploded onto the scene. It's because he was able to line up in so many different places, whether it be the box, the slot, at just the normal drop back safety position. I think Holland can do a lot of those same things for this Dolphins defense. And under new DC Anthony Weaver, I'd like to add a 3rd safety to this room so Holland can take over that Kyle Hamilton role and have another breakout season for the Miami Dolphins, as he's been one of the best defenders for Miami over the past couple seasons. But this brings me to this question. Jevon Holland is not yet extended by Miami. He is entering his final year of his rookie contract. You get 4 years if you are not a first-round pick and you're a second-round pick, and they did not franchise tag him, obviously. So should the Dolphins extend Jevon Holland, type Y for yes or type N for no? I think I should see a million yeses. This kid's an absolute stud. Let's keep him in Miami long-term. Next man is actually a newcomer, Shaq Barrett, the linebacker/edge who jumped teams in Florida, coming from Tampa Bay to Miami. And I really like what Barrett's going to bring to the table for the Dolphins. He's an experienced pass rusher who's had really good seasons for the Buccaneers in the past and was one of the best edge rushers in the NFL just a couple seasons ago. Had an okay season in 2023, only compiled 4.5 sacks, 3 TFLs, did force 3 fumbles though. But as he comes over to Miami, he is presumed to be the third edge in this group behind Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb when they return fully healthy from injury. You obviously add Mohamed Kamara and Chop Robinson to this group from the NFL draft, but I still think Barrett is going to have a terrific 2024 season. And if you look back at the Ravens defense from a year ago, as we do reference them quite a bit here because that's where Weaver was coming from and where he coached last year. This is more of his style, though, because Weaver was on that defensive line, so he worked a lot with pass rushing and defensive linemen. And you saw what they could do as a group last year. Justin Matabuike, 13 sacks. Clowney, 9.5. Van Noy, 9. Away, 5. So it is proven that multiple players can have high sack numbers on this Anthony Weaver / Mike Macdonald style defense. So I expect Shaq Barrett as that third guy to have quite the good stat total in terms of sacks and getting after the passer because he still has that talent in him. Obviously, Chubb and Phillips are going to lead the way, but you don't have Christian Wilkins from the interior. So you're going to see more packages with multiple edges rather than interior defensive linemen. Yes, Zack Sealer will be on the field in passing situations as well, but I truly do believe under this defense that Mike Macdonald ran last year and Anthony Weaver is probably going to take a lot from, you will see a lot of Shaq Barrett, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, and even Chop Robinson sharing the field in particular packages. I think there's a lot of possibilities for this Dolphins defense to where you can have potentially Chubb and Barrett on the outside and then have Jalen Phillips and Chop Robinson kind of lined up on the inside, but not necessarily in a three-point stance. Like they could be standing up, rotating around, because you get those four athletes rushing the passer at the same time, and boy, those opposing quarterbacks are going to be scared shitless. All right, let's move on to a secondary member once again, and it's Cam Smith, the second-year man from South Carolina, who was picked 51st overall in the 2023 NFL Draft during the second round. And I think Cam Smith is going to break out because it's going to be needed for him to break out. I mean, you lost a couple key secondary members in this past free agency class, and you replaced Xavier Howard with Kendall Fuller, but the depth is still a concern when you ask me. I like the top three for Miami and Jalen Ramsey, Fuller, and Kader Kohou. But who's going to be that fourth or fifth guy to stand up and really make a name? I think it could be Cam Smith because also the rumors out of camp and offseason so far is that Nick Needham, who's the fourth corner for Miami right now on the depth chart, is likely going to move to safety or at least have an extended role in that depth chart come September and August. So Smith now going to be promoted to that fourth or fifth corner, and he's going to have to show why he was a top 60 selection a draft ago, because he did only play 22 snaps in 2023. He battled injuries. He was never able to get in the good graces of Vic Fangio, who's the DC for Miami last year, if you did not know that. So Cam Smith, under new defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, is going to have to get in the fold and have to become more of a factor for this Dolphins defense in this year because injuries are bound to happen. So Smith has to be ready to play and ready to ball out. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We mentioned why you should be subscribed earlier in the show with the Dolphins schedule release, but we also are on the road to 57 subscribers in terms of 1,000, and we are 649 away. So help us out, hit that sub button, and let's get to 57K subs ASAP. Come on, Dolphins fans. I believe in you. All right, next man is Jordan Brooks, the linebacker who jumped ship from Seattle to Miami. And I do find it funny that Jerome Baker, who obviously Brooks is replacing in the 305, went to the Seahawks. So the two basically just flip spots. And I am high on Jordan Brooks. I think he is a very talented player, former first-round pick out of Texas Tech, who the Seattle Seahawks traded back up into the first round to get just three or four seasons ago? I think it might be 5 now at this point. But Brooks had a really good season in 2023. And when you actually compare him to Jerome Baker, who obviously left Miami to go to Seattle, like Brooks put up raw numbers. Now, Baker might be a better pass coverage linebacker, yes, but there is no denying that Brooks is able to get into the running game, gobble up tackles, and he will be an excellent complementary linebacker to David Long Jr., the other linebacker on the middle of this defense, because David Long Jr. is one of the better coverage linebackers, but Brooks is one of the better run stoppers, and he could also rush the passer from that interior linebacker spot, totaling 4.5 sacks just a year ago. You see the pass breakups to interceptions. Baker's a little bit better in that category, but Brooks is a better run stopper. And to me, I know a lot of Dolphins fans wanted to retain Jerome Baker. I understand that. But I do not think you downgraded by moving from Jerome Baker to Jordan Brooks. They have their pros. They have their cons. They're not the same type of linebacker. Like I said, Baker's more of an athletic coverage linebacker. Brooks is more of a thumper, get downhill and hit you in the run and plug those running gaps in between those offensive lines. I don't think you downgraded. You got a different style of linebacker, but one that actually complements David Long Jr. better, in my opinion. So when you run nickel, I do expect to see a lot of those 4-2-5 formations with 5 defensive backs, the 2 linebackers over the middle of Baker and Brooks, and then 4 defensive linemen, whether it be some combination of Chubb, Phillips, and the rest of the game. So pick someone for me. We went through 4 people who I think are going to break out under Anthony Weaver thus far, but which Dolphins defender will ball out in 2024? Drop a name for me down below. Maybe it's someone I didn't mention just yet, or it could be someone that we've already talked about. All right, last name we are going to talk about is Zack Sieler, the defensive tackle who is going to try to replace Christian Wilkins. And to me, this isn't any breakout or ball out under Anthony Weaver type of connection here, but I think he's going to break out just because he's going to have a lot more workload on his plate. Like, this is a product of workload. When you lose Christian Wilkins, who is a $110 million type player, as the Las Vegas Raiders paid him that in free agency, you're going to have big shoes to fill. And Sieler now headlines this defensive line depth chart rather than Christian Wilkins. I thought Sieler was a great 1-2, like, kind of Robin to Wilkins' Batman. And I like Tier Tart. I like Gallimore. They're fine ball players. But when you lose Christian Wilkins, that's a massive hole that you have to fill on this defensive line. And Sieler is going to have to be the main, I guess, brunt and take most of that, like, vacancy that is replaced or needs to be replaced by Christian Wilkins. And it's like, those are big shoes, man. Wilkins is one of the best defensive tackles in the entire NFL. I think Dolphins fans recognized it. I think Dolphins fans wanted to keep him. I think Chris Greer wanted to keep Christian Wilkins in Miami. But the fact is, you couldn't pay him because of what you're paying some of the players on offense, some of the players in the secondary, and you just couldn't do it. So you have to look inward, and Zack Sieler is going to have to try to replace Christian Wilkins' big shoes. That will do it for today's show. Make sure you do follow me on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. We'll have a full update on the Dolphins schedule later today, but also it will be on my Twitter first before we come out and make a video. So if you do want to see the Dolphins full schedule before we come out and break it down on this video, make sure you follow me at Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. I'll see you on the video later today. Go Fins.